Prima volta la mia nonna è andata agli Stati Uniti una venerdì sera per lo Shabbat e poi ha preso in braccio le due candele, portacandele, per andare giù nella cantina, per accendere le candele dello Shabbat. Mio padre ha detto, mamma, questa America, la terra, paese di libertà. E ha detto, non sono sicura. And so she continued in America to light candles in, we call it the basement, the cellar, in the cantina, all of her life, because many traditions, many things that we Marranos did to hold on to our roots, they became practices. And it was very difficult for especially Calabrese, very, very difficult to know which things the family did are superstition, which things are tradition, which things are cultural, and which are religious.
Well, I think that shows us a good aspect of the film that Rabbi is talking about, understanding the different practices that people had that they didn't even know were related to their religious cultural history.
That's
now, Rabbi, in your case, you knew your family. You knew you were Jewish, so even though the lighting of candles was kind of still hidden, it was a Jewish tradition. But what about people, let's say in Calabria, in your ancestral home, who would do things they didn't know that they were kind of keeping up with the Jewish tradition? So how would you find out what they did or that they might even be Jewish?
A very good question, because it was really trial and error. And because my father brought my grandmother to the United States, we all had the opportunity to grow up Jewish because there was an active Jewish community, whereas in Calabria there was no active or public presence or organized Jewish experience for over 500 years. So I went back home to Serrastretta, the little town where my father and my ancestors were from, a town founded by 5 Jewish families who were running from persecution. And I knew from the stories my father told and from what I had understood about the history of the town that back 400 and 500 years ago, everybody who settled there was Jewish, everybody. So I would go around town and I would say, do you think you're Jewish? And people would say, no, I don't think so. And then I realized I was asking the wrong question. What I needed to do was I needed to say, do you have any family traditions that seem unusual in terms of what other Southern Italians are doing? And then I even became more specific. And I said, how about when a baby is born? Oh, yes, when a baby is born, we put a red string in the crib, which, of course, goes back to the Kabbalah. And what about when children reach 12 and 13? Well, when a girl reaches 12, we have a special meal, a special welcoming meal, and we make special blessings for her. And what about marriage? Well, when we marry, we present the bride and groom with a crocheted bedspread that will go onto the matrimoniale, onto the marriage bed. But before it goes into the house, 4 men hold the 4 corners, and we put the bride and groom underneath sotto la coperta, under the covering, which of course is reminiscent of the chuppah. And then there were all kinds of kitchen traditions. I began saying, what do you do in the kitchen? How do you prepare food? What do you eat? Do you separate anything? Oh, yes, indeed. We never have cheese. We never have formaggio con carne. Never cheese with meat because of famale. It will be bad for the stomach. And that's how I began to uncover all of these Jewish traditions. And of course, by being in the town that was part of my heritage, I was accepted as well. So putting those two things together gave me a wealth of information that we see in the film.
So when you would meet a family in your neighborhood and you'd hear these stories from them, and these were people who, by their own accounts, were good Catholics probably. I mean, they probably went to church.
Well,
what did they say? How did they react when you said, Rabbi, here you are, this American Italian, and you're telling them you're Jewish? How did they react? Some people might say, please, Go away. I don't need this.
That's right. That's right. You're absolutely right. And some people did say, "Oh mio Dio, this can't be true." But I noticed that in our town, many people said, "Siamo laici, we're secular," and that was because many people never felt comfortable in the church. Now, some people did. And there would be, of course, an influx of participation at Christmas and Easter. But many people, when they got married in the Catholic Mass, did this little ceremony before the bride and groom walked into their home, into the home that they would share together as husband and wife, which is very much the tradition of the chuppah. The chuppah represents the roof of the home that you will share. It's symbolic of the home that you will actually have. And so there were many times I would say to people that, these traditions are very interesting, that they go back centuries. There's a possibility that your family was Jewish. And for the most part, people would say, we always thought that. We always thought that. And of course, using the right word was became an important part of my discussions and questions as well, because Ebraici, Jews, Palestinesi, because back years ago the area was called Palestine, Ibrei, there were just all different kinds, Judaica. All different kinds of words in both Italian and dialect, which were also had a little touch of Hebrew too. So it was for me, it was very much being a detective. But I will say this: there were a couple of deathbed conversions, deathbed announcements. A young woman, yes, confessions. That's the word I'm looking for. A woman came to me and she said, Our grandmother just passed away, and before she died, she gathered all of us, and she said, "Please do not call the priest. Do not, when I'm dead, do not put a rosary in my hand. No pictures of saints with my prayer for the Catholic prayer for the dead for me on the back, and wrap my body in a sheet. Bury me by sundown of the next day. I never told you we're Jewish." And she literally took her last breath. And the mother and the daughter came to me and said, "What do we do? What do we do?" And so that's how how I've been able to open the door to Jewish traditions to the people, not only in my town, but in many of these mountain communities where Jews fled during times of persecution.